U.S. President Joe Biden has commuted sentences for 37 inmates from death penalty to life imprisonment. In a statement, Biden said he was more convinced than ever that the death penalty must stop at the federal level. The move is likely to frustrate the incoming President Donald Trump, who restarted federal executions during his first term following a 20-year pause. Biden ran for office opposing the death penalty. Let's get more on this with Robin M. Maher. She's the executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center, a national non-profit organization which provides analysis on issues concerning capital punishment and the people it affects. Robin, it's good to have you with us. What do you think prompted this decision by Joe Biden?
Well, I think a few things were great motivation for President Biden. First of all, he started thinking about the death penalty differently during the 2020 presidential campaign. You know, he had just experienced an unprecedented execution spree under former President Trump, who executed 12 men and 1 woman during just 6 months' time. So coming out of that superheated time, President Biden, for the first time ever, said he thought there were some real problems with the use of the federal death penalty. And he vowed to work to abolish the federal death penalty. Now, while that did not happen during his term in office, he was listening carefully to all the thousands of voices that asked him to consider commuting the death sentences of the men on the federal death row. There were 40 men there. And the sense of urgency he felt, I think, was another prime motivator. And that included the fact that President Trump, incoming President Trump, has said he will use and expand the federal death penalty and resume federal executions. So President Biden knew if he did nothing, then those men would be scheduled for imminent execution.
We see President Biden excluded cases of terrorism and hate-motivated mass murder. How does this selective approach affect the broader debate on capital punishment?
Yeah, well, in his decision explaining his commutation decision, he said he had selected those from the federal death row that were not among that group that you just mentioned, including those federal hate crimes and mass murders. Now, historically, the federal death penalty has been used for crimes like that, what we saw in the 80s and the 90s, and chiefly with President Biden's involvement when he was a senator in Congress. He helped expand the federal death penalty, which led to dozens of people being sent to federal death row for crimes that they would not be federally prosecuted for today. So a real change 20, 30 years ago, I think in reflecting on that change, he maybe had some regrets about his involvement in that time. And that's why he chose to exclude these men. The 3 that did not get relief today, as you said, for federal hate crimes and terrorism offenses, those men were sentenced within the last 10 years. They will remain on federal death row.
Right. And your organization has worked focusing on improving the fairness and accuracy in death penalty cases. Can you explain to us or help us understand some of the flaws or errors that could lead to wrongful convictions?
Well, as an organization, we study use of the death penalty, we track it, and we offer analysis for it. We're not an advocacy organization. We don't have policy for a certain result. But what we have observed in both the state death rows and in the federal death rows are people who have been sentenced for crimes that wouldn't necessarily result in a death sentence. Their convictions and their death sentences affected by racial bias, unfairness, arbitrariness, inconsistency. Many of these are systemic problems deeply embedded in the use of the death penalty. I think that's part of what motivated President Biden to make the decision he made today.
Okay, Robin and Maher, we'll have to leave it there. That's all we have time for, but thank you for speaking to us. That's Robin and Maher, Executive Director of the Death Penalty Information Center.
Pleasure.